Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers on YouTube. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky. Free agency kicked off on Friday. The Lakers making 4 moves in the early hours of free agency. They signed forward Troy Brown to a minimum deal. Juan Toscano-Anderson, another forward from the Golden State Warriors, to a 1-year deal, minimum. Damian Jones, former Laker, he'll play a backup center role or potentially even start at center, depending on what they do. Another minimum deal there. They used their big exception 1 year for Lonnie Walker IV from the San Antonio Spurs. Generally speaking, Andy, they went significantly younger than they did last year. Toscano-Anderson is the oldest guy in the bunch, and he's only 29. So obviously a lot more to come on the next episode of Locked On Lakers, but early impressions, who is your favorite of that four, or favorite signing of those 4 guys?
My favorite signing of the 4, probably Juan Toscano-Anderson. Like, I think he's the most established help that they're bringing in, or at least, if nothing else, most established with playoff experience, being around a really good culture in an area of need along the wings. He's defensive minded. He has a ton of energy, stuff that was desperately lacking from last season's team. And, just that intensity and just overall energy, I think he can be really helpful along those lines.
Fairly versatile player, does a lot of little things well, which is, again,
obviously
something they needed last year.
The price is really good.
Yeah. I actually think my favorite of this group is Damian Jones, because I feel like he slots most specifically into a very understandable and role where they have a pretty big need. Very athletic center. We all saw what he could do around the rim with the Lakers. Cheap price, a guy who is coming off not even really perhaps, his best season as a pro, 56 games last year with Sacramento. All of these guys are flawed. You're not going to get perfect players for the for the veterans minimum, or even the taxpayer mid-level. That's $6.5 million. But I really like the way that Jones kind of slots into a position of need there. Who's your least favorite of this 4?
Lonnie Walker IV. And, I preface this by saying there could be other dominoes that fall, moves that are made, and that could shift the way I feel about this. But in terms of their biggest bullet that they could fire, and, the biggest ability they had to bring somebody in, and obviously, you never know the calls that they made, the ones that they can't get. But that being said, Walker feels redundant with what they have now. He is a longer guard, but he is a guard nonetheless at 6'4", 6'5".
6'5". He played about 40% of his minutes 2 seasons ago at small forward in San Antonio, but only about 20% of his minutes last year at small forward.
He's been very inconsistent over his career. He can do some scoring. I think if nothing else, there are people who believe that he could project as a better defender, but so far it's just been very uneven form in San Antonio, which if nothing else is a little bit disappointing, just considering the culture there and just their general ability to develop young players. And also too, just the overall redundancy seemingly with what they have. Again, there could be other things that happen, and I don't think he's necessarily badly overpaid at $6 million. It's similar to how we've talked about with Malik Monk. Malik Monk, who ended up going to Sacramento, would have been a steal at $6 million.
Monk, and just as a point of reference, Monk is going to make closer to 10 a year,
right?
With Sacramento, 2 years.
Just wouldn't have been a good use of resources,
right? And so, I am not wild about Lonnie Walker. He's an incredibly good athlete. So certainly out on the break, he's a great finisher. He shoots very effective around the rim as a penetrating guard. But Walker shot 31% last year from 3, and has gone down considerably every year as his volume from 3-point range has gone up. So he's not much of a shooter. In fact, the Lakers really didn't bring any shooting with any of these 4 signings. No. Nobody you would consider a legitimate 3-point threat. So spreading the floor, that problem hasn't been solved yet. I'd say that sort of collectively is my biggest criticism of what they've done so far. I don't mind any of these people in a vacuum, but as we've talked about and we'll continue on Locked On Lakers, trying to figure out how all these pieces fit together is a challenge. We'll see what happens next. Lots more to come, including on tonight's episode. We'll certainly get into Kevin Durant's trade demand, what that means for his potential availability, and certainly
Kyrie
now the
back
availability
on,
of
baby.
Kyrie Irving, who
Mhm.
might be back out there as a potential trade target for the Lakers. The NBA sands are shifting quickly. Make sure you tune into Lock On Lakers, the audio version, and subscribe to the podcast and get all the news as it happens.